and Evie, and I have to say, you have not seen power in action until you have seen a man walk straight into the visitor center with his head up high and just say, "This pencil sharpener museum, it's open today." It was quite something. I don't want to use the word authoritarian, but authoritative. It is a pleasure to be here. It is a pleasure to share this stage with so many terrific poets tonight. Liz and Emily and Jessica and Eleanor and Frank still to come, and Stephen and Jennifer and Carrie. And if I don't think I left anybody out, but if I did, it's a pleasure to share the stage with you, forgotten person, as well. I'm going to read two poems. The first is depressing. The second is depressing, but maybe a little bit redemptive, so we'll see. I should check in just to make sure. It occurred to me that poets really hadn't done enough with Icarus, just not. So Icarus is the son of Daedalus, and they are trapped on the island of Crete, where Daedalus is employed in rather unfortunate circumstances, building labyrinths and things like that. But Daedalus builds a set of wings, and a father and son escape, but things don't go so well, and you may know the rest. But if you don't know the rest, spoilers. Icarus flies too close to the sun, falls into the water, dies, becomes a hero to the Romantics, gets immortalized in a painting by Bruegel, and in a poem by W.H. Auden, from which this poem takes its title. So this poem is called About Suffering. It's never Icarus. It's not that grand gesture of feather, wax, and atmosphere in flux. It's less than that. It's lesser than. It doesn't happen in pentameter. Suffering, failure, agonies in gardens, but in the sideways speak of bureaucrats whose words, like these, disguise what they intend. Under soft, fluorescent suns of waiting rooms, physicians' consultations, where the lungs on the light box are spread out like wings. All this illumination just to show the dark spots slowly blotting out our names. Sadder than tragedy, and silly, these cuts that bleed you dry. I mean you. You know as well as I, Icarus is not for us. He flies and falls, that's all. He doesn't joke to hide his fear, or seem ashamed, or wound lovers with rusted, jagged-edged words. He never sulks in tristesse after sex. He's young and proud. He likes the sound of his own voice. Of course, the world must break and scatter him among the falling birds. It's never him. His father, Daedalus, he's our muse, bent to an unforgiving craft in someone else's labyrinth, the dark exile in which he sets himself to work, letting the candles gutter so the wax spills, seals vein and down at quill and shaft, working longer into the thankless night. He has worked feathers into these wings for years. He has slim hope, at best, that they will hold. Come daybreak, they will stand outside the gate and test the wind. For once he will be bold. At last he sleeps, in fits and half-dreamed fears that love and work and life are passing vapor. And all the wings he's made of paper. It has taken a little bit of time to transition to this idea of being the poet laureate of anything, frankly, other than like my bathroom, and even there. But despite this sense of now traveling Ohio and being Ohioan, I cannot get away from being a Cleveland boy. And this is a Cleveland poem about a certain event that perhaps you might have heard about. The poem is called River on Fire. Stranger, the way of the world is crooked, and anything can burn. Nothing impossible. Who comes to send fire upon the earth may find as much already kindled, may find his city bistre and sulphurous. pitched and grimed. On those suffered banks we sat down and wept. There the prophets, if there had been prophets, would have baptized us in fire. Who says impossible, they fill his mouth with ash. They quench him as if a man could be made steel. A crooked way the world wends, and the rivers, and the prophets. Go down and tell them what you have seen, that the river burned and was not consumed. Thank you all very much. Powerful man.
We're going to complete the evening with Frank Escamilla. Eleanor had a good comment today. She said there's been a real contrast with her style and Frank's, that she afflicts the comfortable and Frank comforts the afflicted. And Frank has one of the hugest hearts I've ever seen. He uses his intelligence and poems and style to make people more than they thought they were. So Frank, if you'll join us up here, we'd love to have you again.
How y'all doing? So this is not, I mean, it's beautiful and dramatic, the lighting, but it's just because these lights to me are like kryptonite. like it remind me of school or being stuck in an office, and it just like sucks my soul out. But it works because it's nice and round. I just want to say I'm grateful to be here. Like, I'm so grateful. It's been such an experience, an eye-opening one, and life-changing. I mean, that pencil sharpener museum. You think you know everything. You think and that started as a sarcastic intention, and the more I thought about it, I was like, wow, someone loved pencil sharpeners so much that they dedicated their lives collecting them. And I loved how much Alan was squirming to go. We passed it about 5 times before he actually took me, and he was like, "We have no time. We don't have any time." And then everyone else offered to take me, but I was like, "No, Alan has to take me. He's my host." Thank you. So I'm going to give you some poetry tonight, a couple stories, and if at the end you feel like you still want something else, those who were there last night who might want a poem from yesterday, I might do that. That's okay. Here we go. It is constant, the struggle to look, to see, to be real, or at least as real as you can be with cuffs on, but your hands free to work in a manufactured plastic society where orders are real but independent thought fantasy. Where we're not taught to love but forced to hate, not encouraged to learn but trained to regurgitate. Wait! Stop and think. These are the roles given to you and me. Chosen by a self-appointed high-class authority where in class they tell me my dreams weren't meant for me. Be practical, fool. Be practical. In ghetto schools, children's thoughts are rearranged to believe that heroes only come in one color, and that evil deeds that were done justify the ends no matter who they hurt. We're in a world where as soon as you learn your letters, you learn which letters to fear, from ABC to CIA, LAPD, KKK, NRA. Hey, what do you say? Acronyms everywhere telling us where we can play and what places we should stay away from today. Numbers, 1, 2, 3 numbers, United States blunders, 911's about as helpful as a sunburn. I wonder, is it the emergency or cash currency that gets them there sooner? The future lying on a concrete block with a cocked shotgun to its temple, about to pay its dues all over the world, to the nightly news blues. Nightly news. Acronym. Negative images growing hateful thoughts, leaving you naive, easily workable slaves who sit and behave as long as we have our picture box. where programs are neatly programmed on TV and us poor folk got one learning channel out of about 63, that's KCET, and lately, it seems like even Big Bird has something to sell to me. We got talk radio talking, but not saying the word that'll help us advance ourselves. They're just drowning the herd with nonsense and noise that makes you bob your head down instead of raising it up. That makes you bob your head down instead of raising it up. And despite all of this, despite it all, still I stand, filled with hope from words of prophets past. And still I stand in awe at how a single mother can raise a good man. And still I stand believing that old dogs can learn new tricks if given a chance. And still I stand knowing that love is more than just a fairy tale. And still I stand behind the idea that one person can change the world with the help of others. And still I stand. And still I stand. But I won't stand still. Thank you. Every time I come out, I get really emotional. Because I always thought I was going to die young. Because a lot of my friends died young. Because a lot of our kids are still dying young. So it's hard sometimes to experience these things and be filled with joy and know that you're a bridge and know that there's a bigger purpose, right? Trying to create bridges so young people can see themselves so we can build a larger community of people who care, and it's just, sometimes it's a lot. I'm gonna do this poem. My cousin was killed quite a few years ago now. And I do this to remember him and to honor him. His poems for my cousin Ricky. And the 100 questions why. His clock skipped a tick and now we can't talk. So we're left to cry the ocean dry. The bullet didn't have his name on it. It had a description. Young, minority, male, full of dreams, hopes, infinite potential. The bullet didn't care what he had been through. Because bullets only do what they're meant to. He was 23. Just a little younger than me when he died. And although it's been years, I can still taste the salt from the tears that I cried the night he got shot. I hoped and I prayed that everything would be fine, but I've been through this too many times and I know that it's not. See, because where we grew up, children choke on angels' breath if they inhale too deep. And invisible lines act as do not enter signs marking out gang territory street by street. It's hood mentality. You learn to watch your back or you risk losing it. You're either a punk, a chavala, or you're down for your shit, see. You don't even have to gangbang to be a part of this. I knew this kid who got killed walking to the corner market to get his little sister some milk. He was 18 with a bullet lodged in his spine, laying on a careless concrete block, bleeding, screaming. dying. And I no longer live there, but sometimes I swear I can still hear his mother crying. And the ironic part is, just like my cousin, he wasn't from anywhere. Just like my cousin, he shaved his head bald because he started to lose his hair. And so we all had to learn the hard way that death, like life, it just isn't fair. So who do I blame? Where do I focus the wrath of my pain? Do I blame the government? Does the right to bear arms give my cousin the right to bear his dying brother in his arms? Or his mother the right to bury her seed knowing it'll never grow again? Do I blame the kid that did this? The child that took my cousin's life? See, I want to find that kid. I want to find them, and I want to teach him. I want to teach him that there's another way. I want to tell him that I know he's scared, but it's going to be okay. I want to show him that the world is bigger than the block, that he is not a waste or a victim, and that the hate needs to stop. I want to tell him about my cousin, how he had a smile that was contagious, and all the mess we used to get into growing up in the hood, and how he was by no means innocent, but he was good. He was good. I want to tell this kid that we are all products of our decisions, and that if he needs to talk, that I'll listen. I want to tell this kid that even though he took my family from me, that I forgive him. So this poem's for my cousin Ricky and the 100 questions why. His clock skipped a tick and now we can't talk. So we're left to cry the ocean dry. He comes into the room sometimes. I don't mourn him anymore, I celebrate him. Sometimes we need tears for that. I'm going to read a couple. I'm going to read. So this is about, all right, this y'all take a breath with me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you for holding space for me. I appreciate it. So my neighborhood is being gentrified heavily. And it's interesting, I see signs of it happening here too. It's an economic thing, right? Money instead of people. And I started writing about my neighborhood. I'm from Boyle Heights, East Los Angeles. So that, what is it? So I could remember. So I could tell my nephews and nieces where they come from, what it was before. So Boyle Heights. East of the Angels River is all I ever knew of Eden, where maize mingles and mariachi dreams. Aslan murals stain the eyes of the working class, where immigrant footprints, proud and exhausted, bleed the story of our people's past. Boyle Heights is a culture on fire. A pair of shoes dangling from a telephone wire, dancing to salsa music in the sky. A 5-star backyard restaurant composing miracles into mole recipes, magic into menudo on Sunday morning, soothing the sound of an all too familiar hunger's cry. Boyle Heights is street corner rosaries for fallen flowers, candle wicks burning faithful for hours, chalk-lined souls lying silent on the street, in the wake of Pachuco whispers, rising like sidewalk vapors tortured by the summer's heat. Boyle Heights is a language of legacy, a legend in our skin, carried by the children who lived it, glistening like lightning in the desert sand. That was my Eleanor moment. I felt like you, little guy. Eleanor's my hero. Like, she became my hero this week. And
You're mine.
too late. I said it first. You're just amazing. She just has such a power, and you've done so much, and I'm really grateful to know you. And I had my moment, so good for me. Don't try to steal it. It's mine. Here's another one about my neighborhood. Let's see, where you at? Okay. So my neighborhood, we lived, it wasn't exactly a project because it was privately owned, but it functioned the same way. And down the street, we had this Farmer John's slaughterhouse, right? And so on Saturdays, when we would be outside, like this cloud of lard would come, would descend on us, and we would all be like greasy and delicious. No bacon though. Didn't smell it. So this is a memory called Clouds of Swine. I remember on certain summer nights of the month, the neighborhood would smell like fried bologna spoiling in the sun. The air was thick with the sweat from the Farmer John's slaughterhouse half a mile down the road. It usually happened on Saturdays. We would be playing kick the can or manhunt or some other violent variation of a schoolyard game that made us feel like men. An invisible cloud of swine would descend on our childhood. You could feel the smell on your face. Like 3 flowers pomade running down your cheeks, it would stop the momentum of our footsteps. Gordo. You guys know what gordo means?
Yes.
It's chubby, fatty, whatever. Gordo would always say it made him hungry for pozole. He was always hungry for something. He used to steal from the corner market, walk out with pockets full of rice. His dad was a ghost story. His mama had 7 kids and no job. Gordo was the oldest. He sucked his thumb until he was 15 to kill the emptiness feeling that lived in him. My mom said the fragrance reminded her of grandma's house, reminded her of a red box that lived on the kitchen counter. It was filled with white paste that sizzled in iron pans, inviting the best beans in town to be born. Beans don't taste the same with corn oil, mijo. It's the offering of animal fat that pleases the gods of the panza. They don't taste the same without it. It smelled like poor people's scraps and screams to me. Like heart disease, like diabetic babies, colonization's greasy breath mocking my ancestors. Like leftovers rotting in the back of the fridge, our mouths suffocated by processed pigs. We were starving for one good breath. Our tongues hungered for the taste of the earth.
Oh, that's great.
That's right, I'm a versatile poet. I can do all kinds of shit. I'm sorry. Let's see, where am I at? Okay, here we go. So, this poem, I was working at the Rialto Theater in South Pasadena in LA, California. And it was this beautiful 80-year-old theater. It was magical to me. It was like, I've never had a home, and that was the only place that ever felt like home to me, working there. I probably wasn't really good at the job, but it felt wonderful. And I wrote this poem there, sitting at the counter, because sometimes no one would come in, so I would just write. But I remember what inspired it, because I was in my 20s, and people would always tell me when I had a problem or I was angry, you gotta let it go, right? And so I asked myself, what's this it that everybody keeps telling me to let go of? So this is my answer. I figured it out. What spins the cosmos and drives minds mad with whys? What created the great times? Oh, I lost. Hold on. Okay, start again. I figured it out. What spins the cosmos and drives minds mad with whys? What created the good times and makes us cry? What put a button on our belly and hung up the sky? It's not God or the devil or even the Most High, no. No. It's got a most ingenious name. Would you like to know what it is? Because I'll tell you. All right, you ready? It is called it. No, think about it. It is in everything. It has cleverly disguised itself as a pronoun so it precedes everything and makes everything what it is. It is nighttime. It is the sun. When you're asked if you had a good day, you say, yeah, it was fun. Or, it could have been better. Or, man, it sucked. It can make miracles. Or it can just be bad luck. It's the money in your pocket, and it's the music in your ear. It's the pain in your stomach, and it's the gas out your rear. It's the monsters in your head, and it's the planets way above. And you want to know something else? It is even love. It's not good or bad, not right or wrong. It just turns into that when we try to hold it too long. It gets really grumpy, and it gets really mean. And if you squeeze it too tight, it starts eating at your spleen. It turns into fear, into anger, into hate. It gets lost and confused. It thinks it's too late. But don't dwell on it, or regret it, or keep it till it blows. You got to quiet your minds. Open your heart. You got to let it go. All of it. Just let it in your eyes and sneeze it out your nose. Feel it with your fingers and pick it out your toes. And when you're feeling really sad and oh so all alone, remember, it is everywhere and everyone you know. Now you're gonna hear it all the time. Right? It's in shit too. So when you say that, that's the shit. I'm so grateful, guys. I really am to be here, and I've had such a wonderful time, and I'm meeting people, and I've never experienced this in this way where I got to stay in a house with a bunch of artists and poets and have conversations and read poetry to each other and get to sit with the poet laureate, right? Dave, and share, like we were sharing the bottom floor, and we were giggling and throwing haikus at each other. No, I'm just kidding. We didn't do any of that. We slept really well. But it would have been fun next time. Maybe tonight. No, but it's really amazing, and I'm just so grateful for the entire experience, especially the pencil sharpener. It was great. Which Dave was the last one to walk out, by the way. Just saying. And Alan kept talking like as if he wasn't enjoying it, but he stood in there just as long as everybody else. And it was a little box. Like I could have carried, I could have put backpack straps on it. It was so small. So I'll do one more, and if you feel satisfied, I'll get off. But if you want an encore of yesterday, let me know. When I was a kid, someone reminded me of this story outside. When I was a kid, living in this neighborhood, I would look for moments. I knew there was something more. I knew I was a part of something more. But I lived in this neighborhood that was violent. And so sometimes I would go and sit on my back porch when it wasn't too dangerous, when there wasn't shootings happening or police patrolling. And I'd have a moment to myself. And I'd look up at the night sky, the Los Angeles night sky. And I saw 7 stars. And they were the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. I was wowed by this magnificent sky of 7 stars. And it was my special thing. And every now and then I would sneak out and steal a moment. And when I was about 12 or 13, I got invited to go to the mountains for the first time. And we stood a little late. We stood way past the sunset. And then I saw what the night sky looked like from there. And I was just mesmerized because there were stars everywhere. And it made me cry a little. It made me sad that we didn't have access to this type of sky. How the sky was a privilege. And I went home and I was sitting with this and heartbroken for a couple weeks. And then I had a realization of the experience. In the hood, in the projects, in the city, in these places, we get the 7 brightest stars in the sky. Because they have to fight the hardest to get through all the light and all the darkness. Just like us. Just like the kids that we got to work with the other day. Just like those of us who feel alone or lost sometimes. Like the dark is too deep. Because it's just not true, you know. They're our relatives. We're all made of stardust. And I'm not trying to compliment anybody. This is a fact. We're all made of stardust. We all have the same elements that they do. So we were meant to shine. Plain and simple. Not a compliment. A fact. So I just wanted to share that story because, you know, my friend in here mentioned it. And I thought it was important. And I thought I would do it as a sort of intro to this last poem. Let me get some water though, for a second. We're water too. We're not only stardust, we're water as well. It's important. Thank you, Mickey.
You're welcome.
Mickey's wonderful, by the way.
Yep.
He's like, he's like this amazing wizard in the shadows. You just hear like the great and powerful Mickey, the voice. Thank you. Here we go. I am he who is called me. Divine manifestation of spirit and seed, world within world of possibility. Intricately simple. Easily complex. Energy made rhythm, made to matter into flesh. On the verge of awakening dreams that will blossom movements. Inspire